There are more inflation tea leaves to ponder this Tuesday. Prices for the 12 months ending in February rose 3.2%, a bit faster during that year than for the year ending in January, where inflation clocked in at 3.1%. At the moment, the story goes like this. The price spike caused by the pandemic and measures taken to treat it is down significantly from June 2022. If you're looking at your screen, it's the spike that looks like Mount Kilimanjaro on the graph. Inflation was at 9.1%. The drop since then is largely due to the Fed's 11 rate hikes, leaving interest rates at a 15-year high of 5.3%. The long-predicted recession, well, it never arrived, but the return to lower interest rates and 2% inflation, which is what the Federal Reserve would like to see, while it's possible, looks like it's going to be gradual and uneven getting there. Meanwhile, those higher prices that accumulated over the last years, those aren't going away. The question of the moment is how the Federal Reserve might react to these data. And to help us talk through all of that, we've brought on Jeanna Smialek. She's a Federal Reserve and economic reporter for the New York Times. And viewers of this show have seen her before, and we're grateful to have you back. Tell us what prices are up and which are down in this latest report.
Yeah, so this was an interesting report in that we saw a reversal of some previous trends. So we saw a slowdown in what we call owner's equivalent rent, which is the metric that measures how much it would cost if you rented your house. So basically a really rough measure of a lot of home prices here in America. But at the same time, we saw rents of primary residence, so apartment rents, going up a bit, and that pushed up shelter overall. We saw energy falling. We saw food prices sort of at a relatively moderate pace this month. But then at the same time, we saw, a real sort of shift in some of the things that had previously been pulling down inflation. Apparel prices, for instance, have been consistently pulling down inflation and actually went up a bit this month. So that was interesting and something that economists, I think, will probably keep an eye on in the months ahead. But the thing that I think economists will really watch most closely going forward is what is happening with services prices overall. They've been a little bit firmer than many economists had expected going into 2024. And so that's really the sort of basket of goods to watch at this stage.
And now the economists everybody really wants to know about are the ones over at the Federal Reserve. Remind us again of what Chairman Powell has said about kind of what he's looking for. And then given that, how do these numbers fit into his and the Fed's calculations about lowering rates?
Chairman Powell and many of his colleagues have basically said that they're looking for a little bit more confidence that inflation is coming down sustainably to their 2% target on a basis that they can trust and think won't just be a temporary phenomenon. And so I think that they've really been looking for continued slowdown in some of those stickier services prices that I was just talking about. And I think that this report probably did not give them that confidence. Most of the economists I was talking to today were saying this probably confirms what we already thought, which is that there's pretty much no way the Fed is going to lower rates at their meeting this month. It's probably not even likely at their following meeting in May. That is probably going to be a conversation for the June meeting, that meeting right in the middle of the year, because the Fed is going to want to see a little bit more data and gain a little bit more confidence that this disinflationary trend hasn't stalled out before they're going to feel comfortable changing interest rates.
And so the longer it gets into the year, Jeanna, obviously it's a political election year, and so reducing rates doesn't happen just in a vacuum. How do they think that through? How do they think that through? Do we know?
Yeah, so I think one thing that Fed officials will tell you is that politics do not factor into their decisions. They are an apolitical institution. They're independent of the White House. And so they're able to set policy sort of without any sort of weigh in from the West Wing. That said, I think it's pretty clear that they are going to become a political football the closer we get to the election. I think we've already seen former President Donald Trump talking about them on the campaign trail. I think there's a real challenge for them if they end up cutting interest rates right in the immediate run up to that November election. It could potentially look, and it could be painted by political parties as being something that could, give the economy a short-term boost, and as a result, make the sitting president, President Biden, look a little bit better. And so I think that there are these political considerations. They try to ignore them. How effectively they'll be able to ignore them, I think, is a big question.
And a final question, Jeanna. There were a lot of people who have been predicting a recession for years now. It never happened, or it hasn't happened. Why is that? What's the going theory for why those recession fears were overblown or that it didn't arrive?
Yeah, I think it's a two-word answer, which is the American consumer. We've really seen extremely strong consumption throughout this entire period. Americans have continued buying all kinds of things. They shifted away from buying goods, which was very goods purchasing was very, very strong in the wake of the pandemic, and they shifted into doing vacations and having dinners out and spending all of their money on services. And so that has been a real tailwind for this economy. It's meant that companies are still doing well. They're raking in big profits, even and continue to do so even as costs come down. And so I think that is really sort of fueling this strong economy that we have continued to see. The question is how long that can last. Will consumers eventually start to pull back? But so far, we really haven't seen that happening.
Jeanna Smialek, thank you as always of the New York Times.
Thank you.